Our eyes and experience tell us the Earth is flat and motionless, and everything in the sky revolves around us. But when we cease to believe our own eyes and experience, we have to prostrate ourselves at the feet of these very pseudo-scientists who are blinding us, treat them as experts, astronomical priests who have special knowledge only they can access, like the Hubble telescope. So by brainwashing us of something so gigantic and fundamental, it actually makes every other kind of lesser indoctrination a piece of cake. Earth being the flat, fixed center of the universe around which everything in the heavens revolves gives a special importance and significance not only to Earth, but to us humans, the most intelligent among the intelligent designers' designs. By turning Earth into a spinning ball thrown around the sun and shot through infinite space from a godless Big Bang, they turn humanity into a random, meaningless, purposeless accident of a blind, dumb universe. So it's like trauma-based mind control, beating the divinity out of us with their mental manipulations. People are always asking, why do they do this? Other than the obvious profit margin motive, NASA being the biggest black budget black hole in existence, sucking in over $30 billion taxpayer money for the fake moon landings alone. Nowadays, hundreds of billions of dollars, and not just NASA, but RASA and all the other fake space organizations around the world giving CGI images for hundreds of billions of dollars. So this modern atheist Big Bang heliocentric globe Earth chance evolution paradigm spiritually controls humanity by removing God or any sort of intelligent design and replaces purposeful divine creation with haphazard random cosmic coincidence. And so by removing Earth from the motionless center of the universe, these Masons have moved us physically and metaphysically from a place of supreme importance to one of complete nihilistic indifference. If the Earth is the center of the universe, then the ideas of God, creation, and a purpose for human existence are resplendent. But if the Earth is just one of billions of planets revolving around billions of stars and billions of galaxies, then the ideas of God, creation, and a specific purpose for Earth and human existence become highly implausible. So by surreptitiously indoctrinating us into their scientific materialist sun worship, not only do we lose faith in anything beyond the material, we gain absolute faith in materiality, superficiality, status, selfishness, hedonism, and consumerism. If there's no God and everyone's just an accident, then all that really matters is me, me, me. So they've turned Madonna, the mother of God, into the material girl living in a material world. Their rich, powerful corporations with their slick sun cult logos sell us idols to worship, slowly taking over the world while we tacitly believe their science, vote for their politicians, buy their products, listen to their music, watch their movies, all sacrificing our souls at the altar of materialism.
Touche, my man.
It's a big deception. I'd say it's the biggest cover-up and conspiracy in history. We've been completely deluded for 500 years. Not everybody, but nowadays it's pretty well advanced.
Yeah.
Most of the flat Earth material you'll find still in existence is from the 1800s, and there was quite a debate going on then. So there's still quite a few people unconvinced of the spinning ball theory back then. But nowadays with NASA and all the photo and videos that they give us, people don't really look at too much further for evidence, as they assume that that's all real.
This is an important video. I am in grave danger. I am making a record of exactly what happened before they find me. I am a whistleblower who worked as a power supply engineer for two of the major companies that claim to manufacture satellites. I have to hide the identity of my voice for protection, but I am real. For 15 years, I was convinced that I actually designed electronics packages, what we call black boxes that are on board satellites. I designed the Mark 271 power converter to convert the solar panel power and regulate it so that it can be used to power the electronics packages aboard the GPS Phase 5 satellites. I also was told I was designing power converters for the Motorola Iridium Class 9A satellites. Then in 2006 I worked for a company in Las Vegas, designing the electronics for the upgraded military smart bombs called JDAM that are guided by GPS. You can Google that if you want to know more. I began to suspect there was something fishy about every company I worked for when on September 17 of 2007 I was pulled aside by an engineer that worked for the Air Force and was the engineering supervisor for the contract. He offered to take me to the Trump casino that weekend and we could have a few drinks and said we needed to talk privately about the contract. I was in charge of prototyping the electronics and guidance system at the time. I wasn't married and I had the entire weekend free, so I said, why not? I didn't even put it together that he had paid rooms at the Trump casino. Why that particular casino? At least not until Trump ran for president this year. I knew that he actually knew Trump and sometimes played golf with him. I agreed to talk. We met at 8 p.m. at the bar and he began to explain to me that now that most of the work was done that it was time to fix the bomb quietly and put the GPS satellite antennas on the front of the bomb. I asked him what he was talking about. The GPS antenna is on the rear of the bomb where the fins are so they will face the sky and pick up the satellites. I thought he had gone crazy. Putting the GPS antenna on the front would have them face down and the metal of the bomb would block the signal from the satellites. I asked, what ground signal are you talking about? I was shocked as he explained that there were no GPS satellites. That all the signals came from cell towers on the ground. I thought he was joking with me, but to make a long story short, he insisted that it was true and the original design was because there were so many people that were involved. We had to build it this way to keep the military secret that we don't really have satellites in space. We argued over this for over an hour while I was getting sicker and sicker at the stories I was hearing of deception to the public. I was hoping that I would go home, sleep off the drinks and it would go away, but it didn't. That's not what they taught us in school. The Earth is round and satellites spin around it and that included the GPS. Why did they let us get so far into the contract before we were told? I would later find out that everything we did was to hide the military secrets. They know all engineers are told that GPS is from comparing the timing of spread spectrum pseudo-random and encrypted code streams from satellites to calculate a position. I had to go back and I was allowed only one engineer who had worked for us longer than I have, to change the antennas. We had to leave the little white plastic antenna on the back behind the fins so that the soldiers would think it was real. We were ordered to hide the GPS ground antennas in the nose of the bomb where the fusing mechanism resides and it was to be sealed in that unit with the primary explosive so it couldn't be opened. He told me of other things, that I intend to expose to the world at a later time. I must say that I was frustrated and the drinks he bought me didn't help, but it all made sense since I knew that our last field tests at the JDAM test site in Los Angeles had failed. I knew they had failed, but I thought that our antennas didn't have enough gain to pick up the very weak signals from the satellites. I didn't even use my brain and realize that even a cheap cell phone from Apple can pick up the signal. It had to be from cell towers, not space. He went on to explain that the white plastic satellite antenna on the tail would remain to fool those building the bombs, if they were smart enough to know anything about GPS. The new antennas on the nose would be built into the fuse where the primary initiating explosive is so that it wouldn't be taken apart or discovered. I am very upset about what happened next, but to make an honest account of what happened, I must tell the rest of the story. I continued to talk with the blonde-haired, blue-eyed engineer from the government that I had trusted. He was getting me drunk, but I was not complaining. He kept talking about the all-seeing eye and even asked me if I had considered joining the Freemasons and socializing with he and others like Trump. I told him I wasn't into that sort of club because they were just old men. My head began to spin and I didn't know what to say because I thought we were talking about designing GPS modules. He then slapped a $1 bill down on the table and pointed to that pyramid with a floating eye above it that I didn't understand and said, "See, that is the ever-seeing eye. You had better learn who you work for," and he left. All of a sudden the smile was gone and he leaned forward and looked into my eyes and said, "You have the highest compartmentalized clearance on this project, and if one word of what we talked about gets to anybody, you will be tried for treason, and that carries the death penalty." Then he whispered something that caused chills to run up my spine. "That is if you live long enough to go to jail. Accidents do happen, you know." My head was spinning, I didn't know what was real. I guess he saw my concern and he said, "You will soon understand." He got up and left. Before I could empty my last drink, two of the most gorgeous girls appeared at my table. Both were at least 10 years younger than me. I should have gone home, but I was young, single and drunk. It really causes me pain to tell this story and be honest about what happened because I was so weak. To make a long story short, the girl with short straight black hair and the curly redhead claimed they had a room on the 6th floor, and like an idiot I boarded the elevator with them. I am ashamed to say that they took advantage of me all night, and at 6 in the morning, when I began to sober up, the girl with the straight black hair said, "You know the truth. As long as you play the game we will be back. But, if you tell anyone about what you have learned last night, you won't live long enough to regret it. People, know the truth. The government is lying to you, and so is the Illuminati who is behind all of this. Pay attention, people, I worked for the government. You should also know that the code name for GPS in the military is 666. And I'm sure it is not a coincidence. But the billions appropriated for an expensive program like GPS goes a long way in perpetuating the biggest hoax ever pulled on the entire world by those in power. That was a long time ago to me, and I've lived the lie ever since with every project I've worked on, including going through all the trouble to build power supplies for satellites that don't even exist. I don't know if the Earth is flat, square, or shaped like a banana. What I do know is that finding out GPS doesn't come from satellites, and that there are really no satellites, and exposing that could get me killed. After living this lie for many years and having to tell our contractors the lie to keep the engineers in the dark, I had all I could take. Last week I got into a fight with my boss, Drake, when I could take it no longer. He kept telling me that it was okay and things would be alright and not to worry about it. He said he agreed with me that it was time to go public, and he said we should talk to the company vice president first, who was a friend of ours. He made me promise not to talk to anybody until we could fill him in the next day. When I turned on my block, I saw a car backing out of my driveway. It had two men in it wearing sunglasses. They were going really fast. I thought they were just using my driveway to turn around. When I got to the house, I unlocked the front door and went inside and was going to turn my alarm system off. I used a professional alarm system because I often have classified drawings and documents in my house. When I entered the hidden closet where it is located, I found that it was already turned off. I immediately knew something was wrong because it arms automatically at 9 o'clock each morning if I forget to arm it. It will not go off until I insert a card with a microchip in it. It is also battery powered and can run for a week without power. I immediately knew something was wrong. The first thing I did was call security at the plant because we have to notify them first when there is a break-in, even at our house, because of the confidential government material. I talked to a man named Larry who is the nighttime security manager. He told me that under no circumstances should I call the police, and they would be out in less than 20 minutes depending on the traffic. These are not nighttime watchmen. They are security contractors from a company that was deployed in Afghanistan, and they were authorized by the government to protect their secrets at our company. Larry told me to stay in the house and lock the doors and don't talk to anybody until they arrived. After about 5 minutes I started getting paranoid that something was wrong. At least I thought I was paranoid. My neighbor is a contract agent that works for NASA who protects two of the astronaut pretenders that live in our town. We had told each other a lot of things that we probably shouldn't, but I've known him for 20 years and we even drank together on Saturday nights. I went over to his house and quickly told him what was going on and that I thought maybe I said too much at work. Being a special agent for the government, he said he would come over to my house and look around. To make a long story short, he found 4 pounds of C4 explosive hidden in the back of my bedroom closet that was on the wall next to my den. He grabbed my arm and literally dragged me out of the house. We ran to his garage and loaded up in his car and took off. He told me he was going to make a call, but not to worry. It was hard to trust him because I knew he was government too. He carries a special encrypted cell phone that cannot be tracked. It didn't take him long to find out from his boss that I had been marked by the government and was considered a threat higher than any terrorist. The government can't have their cover blown on this. Suffice it to say that he did not blow my cover and he gave me a bundle of unmarked cash that agents carry for other reasons. He took me to a location that I cannot disclose. Since then I have moved 3 times, each time just barely staying ahead of the government. I want this story to be public in case something happens to me. I am guessing that if I can't get to another country that I'm a dead man. When the space cover-up is threatened, all stops are pulled to prevent it from leaking since it is the biggest lie the government has. I do not know the owner of this YouTube channel other than he is certain these conspiracies are true. The government hides everything. He has agreed to post my videos when I send them to him on secure channels. I tried to contact some of the newspapers that have broken the WikiLeaks stories, but they claim they can't touch it. The Illuminati has gotten to them. I am contacting a reporter for WikiLeaks tomorrow. There are things I can expose that are in plain sight. I will keep sending my YouTube friend updates and videos of my progress. If I disappear you will understand, but I'm going to give it my best shot. This is my second video after almost getting killed for whistleblowing. You can watch my first video for more information about my situation. A lot has happened since the last video was made. I finally made it to a place which should be safe for a while. I am staying in a nice cabin with snow-covered mountains and a bright warm fire in the fireplace. There are certain theories put forth by the flat earth community to explain certain things. Some are close, but many miss the mark in explaining how the global earth delusion is made. Over the next few weeks, I want to provide some of the inside evidence before something happens to me. This week, I want to go into a very non-technical discussion of satellites, what they are, and how they work in a flat earth model. Before I start, I want you to know that I have been in contact with both WikiLeaks and the Guardian newspaper concerning the release of absolute proof that I have managed to obtain. Both have expressed their great concern about leaking this information. Their experts are looking into the risk involved. I hope things work out, but we must remain aware that there are people on the inside of every industry that will do what they can to stop exposure of their world. This information is very dangerous for me because a lot of people will be exposed. One thing to consider is the economic impact that exposure to all of the deception will cause. I have considered this, and the exposure of the lies is more important than the short-term effects. As I said, I want to begin a discussion on satellites today. There are all sorts of explanations about satellites, which has been a thorn in the side of the flat earth community. Some people might suggest they are actually balloons similar to weather balloons, or aircraft, while some say they even exist and float around above the earth. Still others claim they do not exist at all and we really get all of our satellite signals from the ground. This is another one of those illusions that is in plain sight, and I am a bit surprised at the flat earth community because they are very good at discerning the truth, but this one, I don't believe anybody has quite figured out. Satellite uplink and downlink dishes are real. The uplink beams a signal toward the sky, and the downlink receives a signal, and that signal actually comes from the sky and not the ground. Any electronic technician can tell you why a dish would have to pick up a signal from the sky, due to the way they are made, and they have to be aligned to an exact location in the sky. So, if there are no satellites, where does the signal come from? A balloon? Everybody by now should know that balloons are pushed by the winds. Satellite antennas that are used for geostationary satellites do not move. Can you imagine what a nightmare it would be to make the illusion of satellites by putting up balloon after balloon to keep at least one in front of all of the satellite dishes? Since there are supposedly a lot of satellites in geostationary orbit, the nightmare would be even worse. Another problem is that balloons big enough to carry a transponder would be like large weather balloons, which can often be seen from the ground, especially when the sun is at a low angle in the sky and lights it up. All of these balloons would be seen by someone, and they would also have to come down somewhere. No, satellites are not balloons. Nor are they aircraft. Satellites are also not floating around over the flat plane. It is really quite simple. Engineers have been able to take advantage of some very unique properties of the dome which covers the Earth. If any of you watch science fiction shows like Star Trek, there are hints into all of these things that are hidden, just like in many movies. Star Trek actually uses theoretical science to come up with its explanations and far-out technology. In one of the early Star Trek movies, when they went back to the 20th century to get an endangered whale, they needed some material to make a whale tank in the Enterprise. They visited a supplier of transparent materials, but could not find any that was strong enough. Scotty sat down at the computer and gave the man a molecular matrix that he called transparent aluminum. Transparent aluminum only exists in theory, but it is said to have unique properties. One of those properties was changing the incident angle of an electromagnetic wave from a normal reflected signal. Without getting technical, I will try to describe what I mean. When you shine a light on a window or shiny surface, the light reflects at the same angle that it arrives. In other words, a mirror placed at a 45-degree angle will bounce light in a manner that it will turn a 90-degree corner. Back during the late 50s and early 60s, scientists were probing the dome with stronger and shorter wavelength radio signals. When their technology improved, they found a strange phenomenon. When a radio signal hit the dome, it did not reflect off at the same incidence angle. The radio signal somehow excited the molecules in the dome in such a way that it appeared to retransmit the signal back at the same angle of the radio wave from the ground. This was a revolution for two different groups of people, and those at the top had a brainstorm. They had just discovered a way to simulate satellites to keep their illusion going in the face of better technology, plus, this could actually be used to communicate very wide-band signals over far areas across the Earth. In order to understand why this is important, you have to know a bit about radio and communications. Radio signals are based on frequency, or cycles per second, which is called hertz. Radio signals on low frequencies such as AM broadcast can bounce through the ionosphere, but this is not reliable and changes during the time of day. Another big problem is that the lower the frequency, the less bandwidth it can carry. Digital video signals require a lot more bandwidth. The higher the frequency that is used for communication, the more bandwidth you can use. But, when you get up to microwave signals, which are billions of cycles per second, the signal will only go in a straight line and will not bounce off of the upper atmosphere. Let's go back and look at the dome. Because of the unique properties of what we engineers call coherent reflection, satellite dishes can uplink a signal to the dome and it will reflect back down along the same path. But a secondary signal also bounces off at the same incident angle. This allows bouncing it so that it can be picked up not only locally, but in other countries. But, there was a huge problem. Although radio signals were bouncing off of the dome, they were very weak due to the distances involved. I will provide you the exact dimensions of the dome in a later video. It is well understood and has been probed and measured. Another characteristic that was shown in the transparent aluminum model was related to its electrical charge and its excitability to enhance radio signals that it reflects by resonant molecular motion. If only a way to add a small electrical charge to the dome could be figured out, but this was obviously beyond their capabilities. At least until hydrogen bomb tests in the 50s proved that strong electromagnetic signals called EMP pulses are created with bursts at high altitudes. Secret discussions between the United States and the Soviet Union were held after the scientists determined that with a specified number of upper atmospheric air bursts were planned. To this day, I do not know the exact number. The Soviets and Americans set off several at different locations to make this work. These started in 1958, and the first commercial use of a fake satellite by private industry occurred when Echo 1 was supposedly launched in 1960. After the final charging bursts were fired in 1963, the second fake Echo was launched, while an uplink-downlink were provided for international live television signals between Europe and the United States. The atomic tests worked exactly as the engineers predicted, but there is a problem that has started. Although the charge lasts for years, even decades, it is beginning to drop. The physics of the way the charge works is not linear, so as it drops the reflected signals do not drop, until this charge gets below a certain level. Since atomic tests have been supposedly banned, scientists had to come up with another reason to set off a few atomic booster bursts to keep the charge above this threshold. They had to figure out another way to explain to people why they were setting off atomic bombs in the sky. Along came a new idea: what if the Earth was threatened by something, and what better thing than an asteroid? Of course, both Russia and the United States could design and implement nuclear-tipped rockets to either destroy and nudge a large asteroid over. All of a sudden there are asteroids passing between us and the moon, making near misses. This is a planned programming of the population, so that when the time comes to set off a few more atomic bombs that can be seen from the ground, there will be no question what they are used for. Just like the global illusion. We have come a long way since the first television broadcast that supposedly used the Echo satellite, which was a large inflatable balloon covered with mylar and flashed aluminum. Once they discovered the dome could be used for radio communications, there was a need for more channels and thus more satellites. This is where a big problem for engineers occurred. When the signal hit the dome and reflected, it spread out, and it was impossible to reflect different signals within a few degrees of each other off of the dome. Engineers who had developed radars for the Navy and military had used a system called phased array antennas at microwave frequencies to scan very narrow beam radar signals up and down. I do not want to go into detail on this video because it requires a lot of math. If there are those of you who have technical questions about this, please comment and I will provide you with more information. Suffice it to say that by using phased array antenna techniques, they were able to send signals into the adjacent spots that are 180 degrees out of phase, which cancel the spreading effect. This allows the engineers to put more of the imaginary satellites up and also provide industry with a lot of bandwidth and communications. So satellites are fake, but then again, they are not. The dome, with its unique characteristics, allows this illusion to exist, and also the billion-dollar satellite communications industry. In the next week, I will go into GPS and exactly how it works with the accuracy that it does. I will also go into some very top-secret uses of the dome to actually spy on other countries, and thus creating the illusion of military spy satellites. Finally, I will cover microwave links on the Earth and explain why they actually do use Earth curvature when they design a path, but why this is an illusion that was built in to fool the average electronic engineer. I welcome questions, and if I don't know the answer, will try to contact someone who does. In the meantime, I hope that I can get the information I hold published soon so that we can expose this and I can return to public life. Wish me luck.
And they won't talk about certain issues like the Holocaust or the Jews or Freemasons, and they try to pin it just on NASA. It's only NASA. Don't look behind NASA at the fact that it was all Freemasons who started NASA and started the whole ball Earth deception. And don't look behind Freemasonry and see that it's Judaism that started Freemasonry from the get-go. So who's actually behind the spinning ball model? The Jews. And this is the main thing they don't want you to know, and this is the main thing I'm demonized for, and the reason why I'm a pariah flat earther, but I'm also the only leading flat earther, because all the others are shills that won't tell you the real truth. They're just going to get to a certain point, honeypot and gatekeep you there, and then throw in some hologram moons and other nonsense to throw off neophytes. They're not going to take you to the actual culprits, the actual Jews and Freemasons who started this up from the get-go, because they know it's coming out, and they're fine with throwing NASA under the bus once this gets out, but they don't want you to go to the true seat of power, the true pinnacle of the capstone, the Jewish Freemason power, and they know that that's what's going to happen if I'm the one that exposes it, because I'm the only one exposing who's doing it.
Of course, and you're called anti-Semite. You say, oh, the sky is blue. Oh, you must be anti-Semite. But that doesn't take away the fact that the sky is blue.
Does it? I think the JDL might have a different opinion of that. Yeah, the term like anti-Semite, conspiracy theorist, flat earther, Holocaust denier, they come up with these to pigeonhole researchers so that instead of looking into it, they can just say a term like this and have a whole media, machine to parrot this term and to say it in hushed tones like you're someone who should never be listened to, and it's a position that should never be considered. And, the Jews are victims. They were, the Holocaust, everyone just don't criticize them. Okay, if you do, you're anti-Semite, right? You're not anti-Jew, you're anti-Semite, which is another, ridiculous.
Then you don't like Arabs or what's the other language? The dead language, Aramaic. So you're against all of them, not just Jews.
That's it. Well, anti-Jew is just to the point. Yeah.
Right.
They don't want you to know what's actually going on here. So they create a new label that sounds like there's something wrong with it. Sounds like you're against a race. And that's another card the Jews play, is claiming that they are a race. It's just a psychopathic tribe with an idea, a cult ideology that's existed for thousands of years, where they believe themselves to be superior to everyone outside of their religion. They claim to be God's chosen people, and that they were put here on earth to be masters, and that everyone else are just animals in human form to serve them. I mean, this is literal word for word from their holy book, saying that us goyim, as they call us, which means cattle, us cattle are only here, put in human form to better serve them. If we were animals, we wouldn't have, opposable thumbs and all the necessary things to be good servants. Sounds crazy, but it gets even deeper than this. I mean, they talk about how if a Gentile hits a Jew, the Gentile must be killed. If you steal something from a Gentile, it can be kept. If a Jew murders a Gentile, he must be killed. But if a Gentile, the other way around, if a Jew murders a Gentile, it's God's work. It's fine.
Well, when you say that they have been expelled 109 times, oh, you're an anti-Semite. Folks, once again, these are facts from the year 250 until it happened, 1948, actually. Why can't you question it? Why can't we just sit down and say, please, I have nothing against Jews because I know many of them, they're nice people. But why can't I sit down and ask why they were expelled 109 times from different locations? And they just say, oh, this is not true. I have a list right in front of me. Why is it so bad to ask the question?
Right. In 18 countries in Europe, it's illegal to talk about the Holocaust. Right. You can't, they'll call it
criminalized
revisionism if you point out evidence of the lack of a Holocaust, the lack of gas chambers, the lack of execution orders by Hitler. If you point out these things, you will be put in prison, and many researchers and authors have been put in prison under these laws. It's the only historical event that you are legally unable to talk about. Why? Because it reveals that they are lying to you about the Holocaust, and that they are the ones that are behind everything, literally wars, the banking system, the mainstream media, this ball earth deception, circumcision, kosher slaughter, meat eating in general, Semitic. The entire conspiracy, as Hitler knew, is Jewish in origin. That's where it comes from. And that's why Hitler is the most demonized person in history, because when you go up against the greatest liars in history and you lose, you're going to become the most lied about man in history. And that's what's happened to Hitler. And that's why the Holocaust is not allowed to be talked about anywhere in Europe. It's illegal. And that's why they don't want you talking about those 109 countries they've been kicked out. They'll just tell you those countries were all 109 of them, they were anti-Semitic.
Or they talk about the Holocaust, but they don't talk about Lenin and Trotsky, how many they killed.
Of course, they don't want you to know how many people, how many Christians, how many Gentiles the Jewish Bolsheviks killed, how many tens of millions were killed by Jews They just want you to know this fake number of 6 million Jews they claim died in the fake Holocaust, so that you'll see them as perpetual victims, and Steven Spielberg will put out a new victimhood movie for everyone to see every year, and everyone will continue believing that the Jews are the most...
You mean like Schindler's List, the fictional movie?
Absolutely. Exactly. People think that this is, what actually happened. I recommend people view my documentary called Adolf Hitler versus the Jew World Order. And you'll see exactly what the Jews have been up to for the past couple thousand years, exactly why Hitler has become the most demonized man in history, and how close to the mark he was on pointing out who's in control of this worldwide deception, this huge conspiracy that's convinced us of a spinning ball Earth and has placed Rothschild central banks in all but 3 countries in the world now that are under Jewish usury. The reason that now the United Nations is taking power and we're starting to have this world Jewish government with 33 degrees of the flat Earth in their logo, this deception, it's huge. It's a huge conspiracy, multi-generational, and it's been going from the Jews through the Freemasons to NASA to, like I said, banking system, the mainstream media, Hollywood, completely created and maintained by Jews. And this is admitted. This is not like difficult information to find. They admit it themselves. The problem is that the mainstream media is so censored by these people that nobody's really talking about it, and anybody that does gets squashed instantly, both by terms like anti-Semite and other ridicule, as well as legally by their slush funds that they have to come after people like myself. And physically, if you get beyond that, they're not beyond murdering you if you say something beyond what they're going to allow.
I'm going to lean. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know it's. We've been here for more than 2 hours, so if you can give me a few more minutes, because I have a couple of questions left. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
I'm going to lean into discomfort for a moment before I ask you the question. I must confess that every time, Eric, I've conducted a presentation, the hecklers, the ones who have attacked me from every direction, have been Jewish. What am I saying that this overrepresented segment of the population doesn't like? But let me just ask you then, are they the ultimate gatekeepers of the truth?
Right. They're the ultimate arbiters of the conspiracy itself, and they and their minions are the gatekeepers, absolutely. And Freemasonry is the Gentile arm of Judaism, as they've said themselves. So they absolutely set up not only themselves, but they reach into Gentile culture and give us their psychopathic tribal ideologies and make the Freemasons think that they're part of this and they're special. And so whether you're a Jew or a Freemason or even someone outside of that, they've done such a good job, with Hollywood and whatnot. We think that the Jews are all comedians, you got all celebrities, and then academia and intelligentsia, they dominate it, not because they're so much smarter than us, but that they're so much more organized and cunning than we are. The average person is maybe much smarter than the average Jew, but they're certainly not more cunning. Psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists. This is a psychological term for people who have no empathy, no compassion, no remorse. They're just predators. And this seems to be who gravitates towards Judaism and Freemasonry. And Judaism and Freemasonry also produces psychopaths and sociopaths because...
And less than 12% of the people living in Israel are true Semitic.
Right. Yeah, there's the Ashkenazi, Sephardic... Khazars, right? So and of course, you got Ethiopian Jews, you got Jews of every nationality, race, color, creed, country, but they claim that they're a race. They when they want to, of course. Sometimes they'll claim not to be when that's convenient. But what they do is they say that anyone born of a Jewish mother, regardless of belief, remains a Jew for all of lifetime. And so through this weird idea, they're able to now be somewhere in between a religion and a race and to use religious and racial ideologies whenever it suits them. So they can be a race if they want to, a religion if they want to, they're whatever. But you can hear them talk about themselves. What they really are is a psychopathic, tribal cult convinced that they are the supreme humans and all humans outside of their cult should serve them.
And they're always playing the victim, and I wonder why we send them billions of dollars every year. Because last time I checked, they're pretty smart. And if you and I are born in Israel, and we have several generations of father, grandfather, great-grandfather, but we're not Jewish. We're not Israeli citizens. We're just residents of the country.
Right.
Legal residents.
Germany's still paying reparations. They've been paying for like 100 years since World War I. They've been paying the Jews and other countries under Jewish control war reparations for what they didn't do. Hitler just wanted peace, and it was the Judea, the worldwide Jewry, which declared war on Germany, not the other way around. We've been fed all this propaganda that Hitler was trying to take over the world or something, when he was actually a response to Jewish Bolshevism and Stalin in Russia and everything he was doing. And he was taking over the world, him along with his Jew financiers and backers, and Hitler was trying to stop them. So in school, I never had a single unit on Stalin. Every single year, though, we had a unit on Hitler about how bad he was. I remember that explicitly. And it wasn't until I got out of college that I finally started looking into it myself and found out, even if you believe every mainstream lie about Hitler, Stalin was way worse. Why don't we hear about him? Makes no sense.
And nobody says that, Marxist Jews were the ones responsible for, what happened in Russia, what became the Soviet Union. And I think when you think of the United States and the overrepresentation, when you quote, 2 days prior to the enactment of the German Constitution on 23 May 1948, a secret treaty, I don't speak German, the Geheimer Staatsvertrag was signed, which gave complete Allied control over electronic and print media, film, culture, and education until the year 2099. Keep a few generations brainwashed, Eric, for, 150 years, and no one will ever remember what really happened. A very clever plan.
Very clever. Absolutely. They're cunning. If you've ever known a psychopath or a sociopath, you know that they are ridiculously good at getting revenge. They're amazing at getting you back at perceived slights. They view themselves as the eternal victim, and everyone around them has slighted them, and they're excellent at getting you back for whatever it is that they perceive that you've done to them. And you'll notice this in one of the main religions in the world today that we're talking about. They just constantly play the victim. But in reality, they're the perpetrator. But isn't that the way to do it?
And when we think of flat Earth, we think like what people are saying probably, what do Jews have to do with this? Well, because folks, there's a lot of truth that's been hidden from us for millennia. And you have to understand who controls publishing, who controls the media, who controls government. I have just one question left. One question left here. David from Louisiana, I'm not going to read yours because I think we have already answered your question throughout the interview. But the last question, Mark from Landenberg, Pennsylvania. Hey, Eric, allowing for the changing landscape that has brought our quote-unquote plain Earth to its current state, which quote-unquote flat Earth map do you believe is the most accurate as verified to scale by recordable travel distances, and how do meteors, asteroids, and comets fit into the flat Earth model? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, well, like we said earlier, I'm not sure any of the maps are totally accurate, though I would say the Gleason's map is probably one of the best ones to look into. And meteors, asteroids, comets, shooting stars, so many names for apparently the same thing, that they're still a mystery to me. And, what stars are exactly is a mystery to me. What stars which shoot across the sky with a little tail across them and then burn up, what those are, that's a mystery. When they come down to Earth and they make a big fireball and then disappear, what is that? And then sometimes they have big craters on Earth which they claim are meteor impacts, but then there's no debris, there's no meteor rocks or anything left whatsoever. And there's actually gas pockets which have formed these same kind of things from under the Earth. So the explanation for the mainstream explanation for what meteorites are is that there are these rocks floating in space that sometimes will come to the Earth and burn up, or sometimes impact onto the surface. But I'm not seeing this happen. We've never recorded an actual explosion of a rock hitting the Earth. They've only showed us pictures of the aftermath, which looks, like I said, could be a geothermal gas pocket. You look that up on Wikipedia, they look exactly like the meteorite impacts. So I don't know how they can claim to tell the difference between these. And then with the lights in the sky shooting across the sky, this is a mystery to me. I mean, stars, they twinkle, they change color, green, blue, purple, red, and they're twinkling, like the song says, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Well, I wonder because I'm legitimate. NASA doesn't wonder. They just give you bullshit explanations, and they'll tell you, well, the stars are distant suns trillions of miles away with their own planets and solar systems around them. So they give you an explanation, and you can hold on to that. But does it stand up to scrutiny? No. It's not a sun. I can see it changing color off my balcony, every night. How could it possibly be that? Why are they all the same size if they're distant suns of different sizes at varying trillions of miles? Why do they all look like little dots of light? They're giving us fake explanations so that we feel good, like we know the universe. We know what stars are. We know what meteors are. We have a map. We know what the Earth looks like. But then someone like me comes along and says, well, I'm not exactly sure of the correct map. I don't really know what stars are. I don't know where the edge of the flat Earth is. Oh, it's starting to sound dubious. This guy acts like he knows answers, but now he doesn't have answers like NASA does. NASA gives us all these concrete answers. This is it. People want to have answers for stuff that we can't know. And if somebody's willing to give them to you with a straight face and a nice logo and, a uniform, and they say it, repeat it long enough and often enough, people will believe that instead of believing in a mystery, instead of waiting for physical evidence, instead of opening their minds and allowing it to be what it will be. They just close their minds off to the nearest liar that tells them they have all the answers.
And NASA is, you can look at the charter. This is not a lie. This is not speculation. It is a branch of the Department of Defense. And if they see anything that the population should not see, that's why they have to always send information to the Department of Defense first. But I have to say this before we end. Folks, you will never arrive at truth by accepting what other people tell you. You will only arrive at it by questioning everything you were ever told. Don't take anything as truth until you verify for yourself